There seems to have been a major esports website that is closed almost every year, and it's not from lack of want or readers disliking their material. In fact, multiple sites of these in the past year have been top notch sites. So within the past 2 years, we've had Yahoo Esports closed down in June 2017. You have Slingshot that has closed down in October of 2017. And then you have Blitz Esports, which closed down in November of 2018. And well, they got acquired by Discord, and one could assume it was because of their cell phone app, which was really successful, but it's also goes to show that they just rather take another direction rather than be a media company, and instead just kind of get themselves acclimated by Discord because it's probably way better money, right? So all of these sites were really good sites. You had Blitz Esports with fantastic videos, some of the highest quality production in the entire scene, and they were also backed by a person from Riot Games, so they were funded money from them, right? So that's how maybe they were able to afford such a high quality setup. Then you have Slingshot Esports, who they kind of tried to get all the big names under one umbrella and then produce really good content, in which they did, but at the same time probably is not that sustainable. And then, of course, you look at Yahoo Esports, who were acquired by Verizon, and then they had a whole bunch of their division shut down, or at least the entire Yahoo umbrella. And, of course, Yahoo Esports was one of them. So the problem with the entire journalistic scene is that no one really knows how to monetize it, right? Like, the old model was to use ad space and sell that to companies, sell your ad banners on the side of the website itself or at the top or whatever. But many of these companies are still running on tracking pixels. Now, what tracking pixels are small pixels which have a data count on it. And whenever someone visits a website and sees that ad, it gets a count. And that goes into a data analytics base, which then the advertiser company can look at and see, okay, how many impressions did I get on my specific ad over at this website? Okay, cool. Now I pay them however much money based upon that. Well, the problem is, of course, with the rampant ad block within, especially esports, because we're all pretty fucking savvy at computers, of course, because most of us have either built our own computers or we're just entirely entrenched within the computer scene because, we play whatever, League of Legends or Overwatch or what have you. So you need to know quite a lot in order to even try and run these games at an affordable type of pace. So ad block is very prevalent. And so that kind of fucks over the tracking pixel itself. So the problem is that few companies will trust you in giving them your website analytics instead of it being pre-packaged in this tracking pixel. So instead, they would have to ask you, okay, well, how many impressions did you get on your website? It's like, well, 120,000. It's like, you could just fucking lie, or you could Photoshop something up to say, okay, yeah, this is how much I got. Cool, give me money. So it's really a thin line into something that is, they have to take your word for, or whether it's, I'd just rather go for the tracking pixel so that I can track all the data that's given to me and I know it's very trustworthy. So there's still this barricade, I guess, to overcome when it comes to ad banners and things like that. So now moving to traditional journalism, they have a problem monetizing as well. I mean, the big thing with traditional journalism is that it's a space to where if you get sponsored, then people are going to stop trusting you reporting on maybe that specific company. So you get influenced by those you receive money from. And this is just a problem with journalism entirely. You get influenced by the people that you get money from. just happens even with regular jobs and shit. It's like, well, you don't want your own job to go under because then you would be out of a job. So you aren't really going to talk shit about them if you have high enough power for people to even give a fuck about your opinion. But in instances like, say, NPR, they were berated for advertising 5-Hour Energy, and like there was this whole spiel and stuff, and all their viewers or listeners, I guess, were concerned about it. And then you have to wonder, they probably can't talk bad about their sponsor or else their funding gets pulled, right? Say if they do a news story saying, oh, well, the effects of 5-Hour Energy is actually bad for your heart. Well, then they're fucked. And then 5-Hour Energy will probably not want to sponsor them anymore. So you can see the conflict of interest when it comes to news outlets or just journalistic sites in reporting, and how, well, if you have a sponsor, say you have a sponsor of Alienware, you probably can't talk shit about the people at Alienware or else they're going to pull your funding. So this is a fundamental problem with journalism, and multiple outlets are now going over to a subscription mode. The New York Times, The Guardian, NPR even has a donation line that they heavily rely on. But all of these things require massive numbers, and that's the same thing with the Patreon route as well too, is that you need massive numbers in order for the Patreon route to really work. And then you have to manage your writing flow depending on how many Patreons that you really have to pay these writers. And then not only that, but esports journalism is moving towards the way of personalities. Personalities are a really big thing when it comes to journalists. You have to have a big personality, or else really a site isn't going to want you because you don't really bring in that traffic, right? So no one cares much about a site because there's an aggregator site. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called fucking Reddit. And so what Reddit does is, well, instead of going to that website itself, I could just look at the very top posts and see which one are the most popular, and then click on them and go to those links or whatnot. So that's how websites would now currently get hits. But if you aren't a very popular content creator, or even a website at that, then you aren't even going to appear on the front page of Reddit. So therefore, the problem exists that the easiest way to do that is to become a esports personality, so that those websites will then get more hits upon their links themselves, and then the little ad revenue that they do happen to get, or the little sponsorships that they do already have, they can then work with that instead. Because guess what? You can't sponsor on Reddit. You can't put ad revenue on Reddit. They have to go to your site. So if someone were to make a Reddit post, and just put their entire news post on it, then that wouldn't make the site or the journalist any fucking money. Which is also another thing of like people putting TLDRs of entire articles and shit, and a lot of the times they're fucking wrong anyways, and they don't even go in the spirit of what the writer was even talking about. And sometimes, of course, it's roster list or whatever the fuck. But anyways, side tangent. So these large personalities are incentivized to do things that accentuate their personality. So one of the best ways to do that is, of course, through video, because through written work, it's hard to read sarcasm or jokes or, just any nuances of personality. A lot of the times that comes through speech. So with video, you're kind of incentivized to do that as a journalist, because that shows far more personality and human characteristics than written material. And if you look at the sites like, say, the Score Esports, they're doing really well with over like 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. So they're able to get their ad revenue that way, right? The Shot Caller also does mostly video, and they've moved heavily into video in the summer 2018. So they basically shifted most of their work, like 80 to 90% of their work, onto video itself, doing podcasts, doing interviews, everything like that. So as you can see, it's far easier to monetize video because it also gives you a way to show personality of the journalists themselves, right? So, and then of course there is YouTube just has a better ability to pay because it's more streamlined and by their like AdSense program. And also YouTube is still a place where people check their subscriptions, whereas no one site, no site really has any subscribers anymore, other than basically Reddit, where people are subscribed to subreddits, which then you have to get to the top of a subreddit in order for people to even see your post. So it's better to just have a YouTube page to where you don't even need to get to the top. It's just that you have subscribers, and it works the same way as a subscription to a subreddit. Instead, you're subscribe to the Score subreddit, which is of course their YouTube channel, or the Shot Caller subreddit, which is of course their YouTube channel. So it's just way more streamlined, way more easier, and of course you're more likely to turn off your ad block for that specific channel or whatnot. So journalism is at a state like never before. I mean, the journalists hold most of the power now because of their personalities, and it's not the site that holds the power. It's not the other way around like it used to be. Esports is at a place where personalities dictate which sites become popular. I mean, VP Esports is a prime example of that, and how they have the most superstar journalists working under their website. And then there's the problem that journalists move to other areas because it pays more, right? And not other websites, but other areas of work within esports. And as you could see with Slingshot Esports and how they got all those superstars, it's kind of an unsustainable model, and I don't really see how any site can get around that. Now, you have people that have moved from journalistic field into other fields, like Kelsey, for instance, moved to coaching or to an analyst position. You had Monty, who was a journalist way back in the day. You had Harsha, who was a journalist in Overwatch and then became a coach in Overwatch. You have Shox, who was a journalist and then became a on-camera talent. And then you had Thorin, who he's been staying a journalist mostly through and through, but for a time he was also heavily on camera. Same thing with Richard Lewis. And so you can see there are a lot of different areas in which pay more than being a journalist, unless you're some gigantic personality. So there's clearly a problem with journalism and monetization, and the clear way is to have it crowdfunded, right? That's the obvious solution, but people need to care about the personalities behind the product before they endorse it. They need to have an attachment to something greater than a body of work. With so many sites crashing, it's difficult to find a place for, someone to hang their hat as a journalist, so it stays as a field which is difficult to persist in, and I don't see it being rectified anytime soon, other than journalists bolstering their personality and kind of their bravado, or whatever you want to call it, their online presence, in order for people to actually care. And then maybe we can go to a subscription model, but even still, people have been very hesitant to go to a subscription model because people, I don't know, they feel like they're forcing someone in order to look at the news themselves. And no one wants a paywall as well either. They want it to be completely free to everyone to see and to share, because some of the news is, incredibly important. So you don't want to block that away and, maybe block you reporting about a org that's doing some shady shit or whatever. You probably don't want to put that behind a paywall because it's important for everyone to figure out. So it seems like that is going to be the way if ad companies don't want to change the way that they monetize themselves online. And as more people get more and more savvy on the internet, and as we go further and further into like an age of technology to where people are comfortable being on a computer, I don't think that's really going to change that much, because other websites, that have a higher age demographic, they don't really care about the ad block because it's probably far more minuscule than it is within esports. But just within our space itself, it seems pretty bleak for journalism, and really there's no other way around it than to have large personalities work for your website and either have them shut off ad block or to also get a Patreon running. That seems to be the only way.